Hannah stood frozen in the middle of her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, as the bank representative repeated the words again. "You're listed as co-signer on a $325,000 0-cents business loan, ma'am." She hadn't signed anything. But her husband, Evan, had. He had forged her signature. And now his startup, his latest dream, his reckless gamble, had collapsed, leaving behind a mountain of unpaid debt. Her credit? Destroyed. Her trust? Shattered. And Evan? Gone. He'd packed a single duffel bag, said he needed space, and vanished to Arizona with a vague promise to make it right. But Hannah had no intention of waiting. She wasn't the same naive woman who once supported every failed venture. This time, she had evidence. This time, she had a plan. And this time, she was taking back everything he tried to steal. This isn't the story of a woman broken by betrayal. It's the story of one who fought back. Hannah Morris was 41 years old, a respected operations director for a regional healthcare system in Raleigh, North Carolina. Organized, pragmatic, and deeply loyal, she had built her life around stability and structure. Her calendars were color-coded, healthy and her emergency fund untouched. She was the woman friends turned to when their lives fell apart. But behind the calm exterior was a woman who had spent nearly 2 decades playing financial cleanup crew for her husband's disasters. Evan Morris had once been the charming guy with big ideas and endless ambition. A self-proclaimed entrepreneur, Evan always had a new business plan. At first, it was endearing, his excitement, his optimism. But after 3 failed ventures, mounting credit card debt, and 1 disastrous restaurant launch that drained their savings, Hannah began to see the truth. Evan wasn't just ambitious. He was reckless and selfish. Still, she stayed. Out of loyalty, out of love, out of hope that one day he'd grow up. But each time she bailed him out, Evan made less effort to take responsibility. He left financial documents unopened, missed tax deadlines, ignored warnings. When Hannah tried to intervene, he'd dismiss her, claiming she didn't understand the risk-reward game. After the crypto crash that nearly cost them their home, Hannah had secretly started protecting herself. With the help of her colleague and close friend Dana, she began separating her assets. She opened her own accounts, rerouted her paycheck, and updated the deed on their house to reflect her sole ownership, quietly, legally, carefully. And Evan never noticed. He stopped asking questions. He assumed Hannah would always be there to pick up the pieces. But something shifted after his latest project, a mobile app targeting online wine subscriptions. Evan insisted this was the one. He rented office space, hired a developer, and flew to Napa Valley to pitch potential investors. When Hannah asked how he was funding it, he waved her off with vague talk of angel money and private backing. She wanted to believe him, but she didn't. Not after the missing savings from their joint account. Not after the odd bank statements she couldn't explain. And not after she found a blank loan application tucked behind their printer, with her signature, but in the wrong ink. Dana urged her to dig deeper. "You've covered for him long enough," Dana said. "Protect yourself, and if he's done something illegal, don't let it bury you too." Hannah started documenting everything. Emails, texts, receipts. She scanned years of financial records into an encrypted folder. She wasn't waiting for a bomb to drop this time. She was preparing for the fallout. So when the bank finally called, informing her she was liable for a defaulted $325,000 0-cents business loan, she didn't panic. She opened her file. She called her attorney, Malcolm Reyes. And she finally saw the truth clearly. Evan hadn't just failed her. He'd betrayed her. And she was done saving him. The call came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. "Mrs. Morris, This is Lauren from Wells Creek Commercial Lending. We're following up on the $325,000, 0 cents, small business loan you co-signed for Evan Morris. It's officially in default. Hannah nearly dropped her phone. I didn't co-sign anything, she said, her voice sharp. Lauren hesitated. Ma'am, we have your signed application, credit verification, and income documentation. You're listed as a joint guarantor. Hannah's stomach turned cold. She ended the call, grabbed her file folder, and began flipping through it with trembling fingers. There it was, her signature, on a loan application she had never seen before. A perfect replica, except for one thing: the date. It was from 4 months ago, the same week Evan claimed he was in California for investor meetings. He'd forged her signature. Again. She drove home in silence, heart pounding. Rain streaked the windshield, matching the fury building inside her. When she walked through the front door, Evan was on the couch with a craft beer, laptop open, watching a YouTube video about growth hacking. I need to talk, she said flatly. He looked up, startled. What's wrong? She tossed the bank statement and the forged loan document on the coffee table. Evan stared at them, his face draining of color. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you forged my name. Again. He tried to stand, hands raised in mock surrender. Look, I had to act fast. The deal was hot. I didn't think you'd mind. You didn't think I'd mind being saddled with a $325,000 0 cents debt for your fantasy app? He stammered, reaching for his usual defense. We're married. What's yours is mine. Legally. Not anymore, she said. I've separated my accounts. The house is in my name. You stole my identity. Evan's jaw clenched. You always act like I'm the enemy. Hannah said, voice steady. You did that all by yourself. He lunged forward, desperate now. We can fix this. I just need a few more months. I've got a new pitch lined up. She cut him off. You had 18 years. That night, she changed the locks. The next morning, she froze the joint accounts and met with Malcolm Reyes. Her attorney confirmed her worst fears. The loan application was criminal. Fraud. Identity theft. Evan's fake signature carried enough evidence to take him to court. Hannah wasn't just angry. She was done. Evan had lied to her, manipulated her, and risked her entire future to fund a vanity project, all without remorse. But the difference now? She wasn't going to cover for him. She was going to expose him. And this time, there would be no rescue. Only consequences. The following Monday, Hannah walked into the Somerset County District Court building with a folder under her arm and a fire in her chest. Her attorney, Malcolm Reyes, met her at the security checkpoint. You still want to file this officially? She nodded without hesitation. He forged my name. He lied to a federal lender. He needs to be held accountable. They submitted the documentation, the forged loan application, the fabricated income statements, the fake email authorization, all traced back to Evan's IP address. By Wednesday, the police served Evan with a formal notice of investigation for bank fraud and identity theft. He showed up at her office the next day. You called the cops on me? He said, eyes wide with disbelief. You're really going to ruin my life over a misunderstanding? A misunderstanding, Hannah replied. You took out a loan in my name. You didn't just break my trust, you broke the law. I was doing it for us, he snapped, to give us a future. Me, Evan, she said. You were doing it for yourself, and you didn't care who you dragged down with you. He stared at her, the charm slipping away, revealing something colder, petulant, cornered, calculating. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You think anyone will want you after this? A middle-aged woman airing her dirty laundry in court?" Hannah didn't blink. "I'd rather be alone than live one more day with someone who sees me as a tool." As he turned to leave, he flung the office door open so hard it rattled the glass. The next day, his new startup's Instagram page vanished, his LinkedIn quietly scrubbed of any mention of his app launch. Word had spread through the local tech community that Evan Morris was under criminal investigation. He tried calling, he emailed, he sent long, rambling messages laced with half apologies and deflections. Hannah didn't respond. Instead, she met with a financial recovery consultant and began the process of repairing her credit. Though the loan was frozen pending investigation, the damage had already affected her FICO score and business rating. She didn't cry. She documented. She built spreadsheets and timelines and forwarded every threatening voicemail Evan left to Malcolm's office. Then came the final straw. An anonymous tip, most likely from Evan's ex-assistant, revealed that Evan had also opened a second credit card using Hannah's personal information. It was maxed out with nearly $19,000, 0 cents in charges, flights, electronics, meals in Miami. Malcolm filed an emergency motion. The judge granted Hannah a financial protection order and referred the case to the DA's office. That night, sitting in her home office, Hannah stared at the folder that had started it all. And she smiled. Because she knew. Evan thought he was ruining her life. But really, he'd handed her the key to take it back. Hannah sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by manila folders, bank statements, and old tax returns. She hadn't opened some of these documents in years. What started as a mission to repair her credit became something deeper, a quiet excavation of everything Evan had touched. She found little breadcrumbs he'd left over the years, a strange bank transfer here, an unexplained withdrawal there. At first, they seemed like honest mistakes, things she'd overlooked in the haze of trust. But now, with sharper eyes and a sharper heart, she saw them for what they were. Signs. Warnings. Proof of a man who had been preparing for this betrayal long before she ever suspected. Then she found it. A statement from 3 years ago. A $7,500 0 cents transfer from her business account to an unfamiliar account name. A Morris Tech Fund. It matched the name of Evan's defunct cryptocurrency startup. She had never authorized that transfer. Her signature was on the form, but the style was off, sloppy. A forgery. She felt sick. Maya, her closest friend since college, came over later that night with Thai food and wine. They sat on the couch, documents spread between them. "Girl, this isn't just fraud," Maya said, eyes scanning the papers. "This is calculated, like full-on con artist vibes." "I think he's been using me for years," Hannah whispered. "Even before the loan, just slowly bleeding me dry." Maya reached out and gripped her hand. "Then it's time he pays." The emotional toll was heavier than she expected. She wasn't just angry, she was grieving. Not for the marriage, but for the version of herself that had wanted so badly to believe in Evan. She grieved for the woman who thought patience and loyalty would be enough. Hannah started therapy, finally confronting the cycle she'd been trapped in. Evan hadn't just forged her name, he had made her doubt her own instincts. Every time she questioned his behavior, he'd accused her of being paranoid or ungrateful. Gaslighting disguised as devotion. And she had played along. She remembered one night a year ago when she'd asked why he was still unemployed after his latest startup failed. "You don't appreciate how hard I worked behind the scenes," he said. "Some of us have vision, Hannah. Just because I'm not wearing a suit doesn't mean I'm not building something." She had apologized. Now that same phrase. The next day, her financial consultant called. "We ran a full audit on your tax history. You might want to sit down." Turns out, Evan had also submitted a joint filing the previous year without her knowledge, claiming deductions from her business that he was never entitled to. The IRS had flagged it, but she'd never seen the notice, because the mailing address had been rerouted to a P.O. box he controlled. It was the final nail. This wasn't a man who made a desperate mistake. This was a man who had made her his business model. That night, Hannah took every photo of their wedding, every card he'd ever written, and dropped them into a box. She taped it shut and drove it to a storage facility. Not to keep, just to get it out of her home. She stood in the dim, cold hallway of that storage unit and exhaled. It wasn't over. But she was no longer afraid of what was coming. She was ready. Hannah didn't just want retribution. She wanted justice, strategy, and precision. No rage texts, no screaming matches, just facts, paperwork, and consequences. First, she contacted Vincent Zhang, a sharp financial attorney Maya had recommended. Vincent reviewed her files for 2 hours in total silence. Then he looked up and said, "You've got enough here to bury him in court." They started with the forged loan documents. Vincent filed a report with the State Financial Fraud Division, attaching Hannah's notarized signature samples and the falsified forms Evan had submitted. Then they submitted documentation to the IRS, highlighting the unauthorized tax filings and suspicious business write-offs. Within a week, Evan received a notice of audit and a preliminary investigation into suspected identity theft. He texted her, "Evan, you're overreacting. I said I'd fix it. Hannah, you didn't fix it. You hid it. Now I'm fixing it." Then came the house. Though they were still legally married, Hannah had never added Evan to the deed. With Vincent's help, she filed an emergency motion to bar the sale of any marital assets and locked all shared credit accounts. She moved half their joint savings, what little was left, into an escrow account for legal separation. When Evan tried to withdraw funds the next day, he was denied. 2 days later, Hannah filed for divorce. But she wasn't done. She published a blog post on her design portfolio titled, "When Your Partner Becomes a Parasite." It detailed her story, and anonymously at first, but readers knew the truth. Comments poured in from fellow entrepreneurs, designers, and women who had been manipulated, used, and financially gutted by someone they trusted. The post went viral in the Businesswomen's Network. Then a popular design podcast invited her to speak. She said yes. On air, she talked about how women are conditioned to be supportive, forgiving, and endlessly patient in relationships. 2 weeks later, a woman named Clara reached out to Hannah via LinkedIn. "I used to work with Evan," her message began. "He used your name to secure a pitch meeting at my last firm. Said you were his funding partner." Another lie, another lead. Hannah forwarded the message to Vincent. He added it to the growing fraud case. Meanwhile, Evan was spiraling. His startup accounts were frozen. His crypto investments, already worthless, were under review. He had no access to the house, no cash, and no allies. Jessica, the woman he'd been texting late at night, blocked him the moment things got messy. Hannah, however, was thriving. She launched a private coaching group for female freelancers. Within days, her subscriber list tripled. Then came the final blow. A mutual acquaintance messaged her one night. "Did you see Evan's Reddit post?" It was a desperate, rambling thread in a startup forum. He complained about being taken down by a vengeful ex, blaming petty women who don't support innovation. He ended it by begging for new funding opportunities. Hannah took a screenshot, smiled, and closed the tab. The next morning, Evan showed up outside her office building. Disheveled, angry. "You ruined my life," he snapped. Hannah replied calmly, "You did that the day you forged my name." He stepped forward, voice raised, but she already had her phone out. Security escorted him off the premises, and the footage was submitted to her attorney. Later that week, Hannah sat with Vincent in court as the judge reviewed the first wave of charges: forgery, identity theft, tax fraud, misrepresentation. Her heart didn't race, her palms didn't sweat. She was grounded. When the judge approved the restraining order and fast-tracked the divorce proceedings, Hannah finally allowed herself to breathe. She hadn't just exposed Evan. She had dismantled his illusion, piece by piece. And she did it with truth. Hannah stepped into her new life without looking back. There were no second guesses, no lingering doubts, only forward motion. The chaos Evan left behind had cleared a path she hadn't realized she needed. She started each day with intention, no longer waking up to frantic texts about his money problems or emergency calls about lost investments. Her mornings were hers again, quiet, focused, free. Business boomed. With her credit rebuilt through a protective credit freeze and careful legal maneuvering, Hannah landed a new contract with a boutique hotel chain looking to rebrand. It was the biggest project she'd ever signed. She poured herself into the design, transforming bland lobbies into immersive experiences. Her creative freedom was no longer stifled by Evan's whims or guilt trips. More importantly, she started helping others. She launched a digital course called Designing Boundaries, a crash course in financial literacy, emotional awareness, and legal basics for women freelancers. Within the first month, over 800 women signed up. The testimonials were raw and real. "You made me realize I wasn't crazy. I stopped giving him access to my bank account. I finally hired a lawyer. Thank you." Hannah didn't see herself as a hero, just prepared, and that preparation had become her power. She gave a TEDx talk in her city titled "The Cost of Silence." In it, she shared her story not as a victim, but as a strategist. She explained how love doesn't mean signing your name to someone else's disaster, and how hope doesn't have to come at the expense of clarity. Afterward, a teenage girl waited to speak with her. "My mom's going through something like this. Can I send her your video?" Hannah hugged her and said yes. Even at home, things had changed. The apartment she once shared with Evan had become a reflection of her personality: warm, bold, intelligent. She replaced the couch he had chosen with one she adored, painted the walls herself, and created a reading nook by the window that caught morning light just right. She adopted a dog, a scrappy rescue named Fig, who refused to be ignored and adored her fiercely. When her divorce finalized, Hannah didn't host a party. She didn't post on social media. She simply took a long walk by the water, then came home and brewed her favorite tea. Maya visited later that evening. "You look different," she said. "I feel different," Hannah replied. "Like my life is finally my own." They clinked glasses. There were still hard days, triggers, emails, the occasional legal update, but they didn't unseat her anymore. She wasn't afraid of falling. She knew how to get back up. Her final message to Evan, sent through her lawyer, was short. "Please direct future communication to my legal counsel. I wish you peace." It wasn't forgiveness. It was closure. And as Hannah sat down to prepare the next lesson for her course, titled "Red Flags Aren't Romantic," she smiled at the thought of every woman who'd been told she was too suspicious, too controlling, or too cold. Because the truth was, those instincts weren't weaknesses. They were wisdom. And now, Hannah was living proof that trusting yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. Evan pled guilty to attempted fraud and identity theft. The plea deal kept him out of prison, but ordered mandatory restitution payments to Hannah and barred him from contacting her directly. When Hannah heard the final verdict, she didn't celebrate. She didn't cry. She simply closed her laptop, leaned back in her chair, and exhaled. It was over. Evan, once the center of her chaos, was now a distant footnote in a chapter she had already turned. She no longer checked her bank accounts in fear. No more shadowing financial statements. No more wondering if something else would surface under her name. With Vincent's guidance, she had locked down everything: her credit, her legal rights, her digital presence. She felt safe, and that safety gave her freedom. She joined a local women's mentorship group and volunteered twice a month, guiding young professionals in contract negotiation and financial safety. Her course continued to grow, thousands of women sharing their own stories of betrayal, fraud, and recovery. Each message reminded her she was never truly alone, and neither were they. Sometimes, she still thought of Evan, not with longing, but with clarity. He had wanted her loyalty, her money, her identity, but not her soul. And that was something he never touched. She kept a small card on her desk, handwritten by Maya. Not everyone deserved your blueprint. It reminded her daily that boundaries weren't cruel. They were essential. She traveled for the first time in years. Lisbon, then Edinburgh, then Seoul. On each trip, she collected photos of doors, bright red ones, weathered blue ones, arched ones carved into stone. To her, they symbolized transition, the choice to walk through something new. Back home, her apartment reflected the woman she had become. Bookshelves filled with stories of resilience, art she created herself, a whiteboard with ideas for her next talk. Financial abuse doesn't always look like theft. And Fig, always curled up at her feet, a constant reminder that love, in its truest form, doesn't manipulate or take. On the 1-year anniversary of filing the police report, Hannah hosted a small dinner with Maya and a few women from her mentorship group. They raised glasses, not in bitterness, but in victory. Victory over silence. Victory over shame. Victory over the idea that being cautious means being cold. As the evening wound down, one of the younger women asked, "Do you think you'll ever trust someone again?" Hannah smiled, calm and confident. "I trust myself," she said, "and that's more than enough." She didn't need a dramatic finale or a public reckoning. She had her peace, her voice, and her future firmly in her own hands. She didn't feel broken. She felt whole. Hannah's story isn't just a cheating story. It's a story about identity, who owns it, who tries to take it, and who gets to reclaim it. Evan didn't just forge a signature, he tried to forge a future without her in it. He gambled her stability, her credit, her trust, all for his ego and ambition. But Hannah didn't fold. She fought back. With evidence, with allies, with a plan. Because betrayal doesn't have to end in ruin. Sometimes, it sparks a reinvention. If you've ever been lied to, financially manipulated, or made to feel like your intuition was paranoid, this story is for you. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are not wrong for asking questions. And you are never too late to protect your future. Hannah's victory didn't come from revenge. It came from readiness, from refusing to be caught off guard again, from turning pain into purpose. She now stands as a voice for others navigating betrayal masked as love. And her voice is only getting louder. If her journey inspired you, if you've seen pieces of yourself in her resilience, please like this video, share it with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe to Veiled Fury. Because here, we don't just tell cheating stories. We rewrite them. With courage, with justice, and with power. Together,